Got a tank of gas, got a few regrets, got a memory of some love I'd like to forget. So I'm sad now, it's what I know best. Where I'm headed now is anybody's guess. All that I know is when it gets cold, shut the windows and I'll lock the door. Loneliness feels better alone. I'm gonna grow my beard, had a new address, 'cause I'm steering clear of a crowd I'll never impress. So where I go, don't follow, no, 'cause it's in my bones. When you know, loneliness feels better alone. Don't go losing sleep, it's alright with me.
Hey guys, hope you're well. So in this video I'm going to be talking a little bit about how I achieve what is referred to as the film look. And I thought I'd just start off the video before I talk about the how by talking about the why. Main reason being obviously that I just adore the look of film. You know, I love those filmic tones. I love the way that it reacts to nice light. I like the way that, you know, if you underexpose it, you get those muddy shadows. I absolutely love grain. The more grain, the better in my opinion. And I guess that film look just has this nostalgic feeling to me. You know, a lot of my childhood photos were taken on film. My dad was a photographer, he had his own darkroom, so it brings back those memories for me. Now, I'm sure there's a few of you internally screaming right now, or possibly externally screaming at me, and you may have even started typing something out along the lines of, well, if you like the look of film, why don't you just shoot film? Well, I'll tell you for why. I mean, first and foremost, I do shoot film. I shoot quite a lot of film. I develop and scan my own film. However, if you also shoot film, you'll be fully aware of the cost. Film is expensive. I shoot a variety of formats, 35mm, 120, and even 4x5 large format. And to give you an example, if I want to shoot, say, some color large format photography, a box of 10 sheets is going to cost me something along the lines of £70. So that's £7 a photo. It's not cheap, whereas I can use a digital camera, and once I've got the camera, every picture's free. So there's that reason to it. And you know, it's great to see that there are companies releasing new film stocks or re-releasing old film stocks, for example. And there's even a few companies out there that are now talking about releasing, you know, new film cameras like Pentax and Leica, which is great to see. There's definitely a resurgence of film, and you know, I'm all for it. However, I don't see the cost of film going down anytime soon. So for that reason, I kind of try to keep it as a luxury. You know, I use it for specific purposes. If I've got a specific shoot in mind, or I'm working on, you know, like a long-term personal project that I want to be shot on film, that's what I use it for. I don't really shoot it anymore just for day-to-day usage or taking pictures of my family. For that, I'll stick to digital and try and edit them to look like film. Another reason being the environment. You know, I'm a vegan, which I initially went vegan 2 years ago for environmental reasons. And I can't bring myself to then just kind of be wasteful with film, especially when it comes to like the chemicals, and knowing that the manufacturing of film and film cameras and stuff has its own negative impacts on the environment. And then I guess lastly is just there's much more room for error. Like I said, I develop and scan my own film as well, and there's just so many stages where something can go wrong. You know, I've had a bad batch of film recently from Ilford that had mottling, which was really annoying because I was looking forward to having those photos. You can get light leaks on it, you can get issues with the camera like mechanical failures. When you're developing, things could go wrong. You might get the temperature wrong, you might completely screw it up. Even scanning, there's room for error there. So there's much more room for error, and if you're doing something and you know you want to have that photo and then you get to the end and it's gone wrong, it's quite disheartening. So there you go, there's a few reasons of why, before you start typing and having a go at me, why I'd want to shoot digital and make it look like film. So now that's out of the way, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just chat about two things. Firstly, gear, how I achieve the film look with gear, and then secondly, how I achieve the film look with post-processing. So in terms of gear, I mainly shoot with this, which is a medium format digital camera, a GFX 50R. It's one of the first medium format cameras that Fujifilm released. They've since released a few iterations after this, but I like this one because it's a rangefinder style, and I much prefer that. I shoot it with a Voigtlander 58mm f1.4 lens. Now in terms of the sensor on this, being a medium format camera, you get a lovely big sensor on there, and I'm using this, I say vintage, it's not vintage, but it's a softer, older lens, so it's a 58mm. And due to the conversion of having the big sensor with this full frame lens, the 58 1.4 actually turns into more of a 40mm f1. And yeah, I'll show you some digital images while I'm talking. It almost gets me that sort of large format look, you know, the pop, that 3D pop you can get by using this lens on this sensor. It helps to achieve that film look. Now, if you're looking to achieve the film look yourself, I would suggest, obviously, if you can't afford going down that route, just getting yourself an older lens, you know, an older, softer, vintage lens. Obviously, lenses these days, they're seeking perfection. They were seeking perfection back then, but obviously that's as good as they can get. They have progressed over the many years and got better and better and better, and lenses have got sharper and sharper and sharper and much more clinical. So if you wanted to achieve the filmic look, I would definitely recommend shooting with some older, more vintage lenses, some softer lenses. I also put on my GFX a filter, sometimes a glimmer glass filter, which also just helps to soften it a little bit more with still keeping some of the sharpness details. That is how I achieve the film look with gear. So to finish up, I'm just going to sit down on my laptop and edit through a few images and just show you what profiles I use and how I just add a few sort of finishing touches in Photoshop to make it really look like film. Okay, so we've got Lightroom loaded and I've just got these 4 images that I'm going to edit just to kind of show you what tweaks and stuff I do to make them look a little bit more like film. Now obviously before I get started, I should probably tell you that the film emulation profiles I'm using I purchased from a company called the Archetype process. They are hands down the single best way to get your digital images to look like film. They are the best profiles I've used. You know, I've been a photographer for 10 years. I've used things in the past like Mastin Labs, VSCO, etc. And these are just the best. You know, they haven't paid me to make this video. I've not been sponsored. I own all of their packs. They're just, you know, amazing. And yes, they are expensive. They've got a Kodak pack, a Fujifilm pack, and a monochrome pack. And they've got some Photoshop actions to add grain. I use all of these because they're the best, you know. Now, I've made my own presets in the past. You know, if you can't afford these, I do have some free presets on my website, tomhumble.com. I've got a black and white one and some Fujifilm film look presets on there. If not, I recommend a website called freepreset.net. There are hundreds and hundreds of free presets on there, as well as Photoshop actions and overlays and stuff. So, you know, if you can't afford to buy these ones, then there are other options out there, but from experience, you can't beat these, and someone has put a lot of time and effort into these in, you know, recreating the different filmic tones and scanning various different, you know, grains and stuff like that. So they're really, really worth it. So on the left here, obviously I've got some shortcut presets that I've saved. These are just where I've made the adjustments using the profiles already to kind of get me close to a look. But what I'm going to do is just edit them from scratch, as if, you know, you've just downloaded the profiles yourself. So once you have downloaded these profiles and you've got on your computer, you come over to the right here onto the profile section, and you'll see that they've, you know, been installed. So you've got the Fuji pack or the Kodak pack. You get a normal pack, push 1 stop and push 2 stops. And then within that, you've got the various different kinds of film: Ecto 100, Portra 160, Portra 160 NC, VC, Portra 400, Portra 800. You know, there's even sort of expired film stocks and stuff that you can get. So it's really, really good. They've got, depending whether it was scanned with a Frontier scanner or a Noritsu scanner, so there's such an array of options on there, to the point where I just favourite the ones I use and then keep them here so I can access them a little bit quicker without looking through all of them. So the way I tend to treat it, especially for like photo shoots like this with this model, is I'll try and think, if I was shooting film, how would I have shot it? So, you know, I've got a Bronica SQAI, so perhaps I would have gone in with that as well. I actually did with this shoot, but so if I was doing that, then obviously it would be 6x6, so I'd crop it to square crop just to match that. And then in the studio, I'd use quite a low ISO speed film, so maybe something like Portra 160. So I'd apply a Portra 160 profile. And then all you want to do is basically just work your way down the basic panel. So always get your exposure to a level where you want it to be. Film obviously has great highlight retention, so always drop your highlights down when you're trying to make it look like film. Bring up the shadows a little bit, whites down, maybe blacks up a smidge. Obviously when you're shooting with digital, it can be quite sharp, so usually I would drop the clarity down as well, and maybe just bring some texture in to counterbalance that. But that is pretty much it. Like, I wouldn't do too much. Obviously I'd tweak it a bit more. I'd get the temp and tint right, so it looks a bit green. I'd bring some pink. Looks a bit too warm. I'd bring some of that down. Somewhere around there, for example. With the profile as well, you can lower it down, bring it up stronger, get it to a point where you want. Often I find around 90% kind of works best for that filmic look. And then sometimes when you're trying to get a good film look, you might want to come down to your tone curve and just mess around with this bottom bit to kind of lose some of that shadow detail and make them a little bit muddy, make it, you know, proper look like film. But when you're happy with the look, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it into Photoshop and use these Photoshop actions. Edit in Photoshop. So these film grain overlays, you've got a few varieties. I think these numbers, these like 4800, 6000, etc., are all to do with the resolution of the photo that you're using. So I tend to stick to the lowest one, 3600. So this is a color image, so I put the color grain on it, and then within that you've got 35mm, 645, 6x7, 4x5, and each one you've got the different ISO speeds, so ISO 100, 400, 1600, etc. So I quite like a bit of grain, so I'm going to go for 645, 400 just to get a nice amount of grain on there. Click run, and that will literally do everything by itself. On the website of the Archetype process, they've got some links to some YouTube videos where they talk about how to use the profiles properly, how to apply these grain actions, how to get the most out of them and stuff like that. So if you're looking at investing in these, I'd highly recommend watching the videos just so you know how to get the most out of them. And then once it's done, obviously you'll see that the grain has been applied, and when you zoom in you can see the grain is proper colour film grain, right? You've got those almost those different sort of hues of you know, reds and greens and magentas and stuff like that, whereas if you're applying the grain straight within Lightroom here, which you can do, yes, you're getting the grain, but you're not getting that proper colour film grain that you would get otherwise with proper film. So yeah, that's like the finished image compared to the raw image there. So I'll just quickly edit through these next ones. So for example, something like this, I'd want it's a moment, you know, she's got that look on her face, and I always prefer black and white for taking away distractions, like this bit of yellow up here and the leaves. So I would edit in black and white. So I might pretend, for example, that I shot it on Kodak Tri-X. So I'd apply the profile, get the exposure to the level I want it to be, drop them highlights down, for example, drop the clarity down, bring up the texture a little bit. I would do more tweaks, obviously, but I'm just going to go through this quickly. Mess with the contrast, get it to where you want. Tri-X is quite contrasty, so I'll bring a bit more up. And then again, I would just take it into Adobe. And once it's loaded, I'm going to obviously put the monochrome grain on it instead of the color one, which is there. I want this to look like I shot it on 35mm Tri-X 400, so I'll put the 400 grain on it, click run, and there you see when you zoom in, you've got proper film grain applied to your image. You know, that's, zoom in there. That's the original. That's with grain. So it really does a great job. Like, I'm super happy with it. I've never been as happy with how my final images are coming out than I have been with using these profiles. So I've got wedding here, couple. I tend to, so I'm going to use my presets for this one just to make it a bit quicker. What I tend to do is for, you know, Caucasian and light skinned people, I use Fuji Pro 400H, and for dark skinned people I usually stick to using Kodak Portra 400. That does change depending on the lighting situation. Obviously I live in the UK, it's often very overcast, and I find that Fuji Pro 400H looks better with overcast weather, whereas Kodak Portra films look much better when there's a lot of sunshine. So if we do have sunny days and sunny weddings, I might stick to using Portra instead. But yeah, so I've got, you know, like these 35mm versions as well saved just to make it quicker for me. So if I did want to edit a wedding with either Fuji 400H or Kodak Portra 35mm, the options are there. And like I say, I've got these other versions saved down here, even like a T-Max 100 and a Kodak's Tri-X 320 for when I'm trying to recreate those large format looks. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all there is to say about the profiles. Are great. You've got so much selections in there. It is just a case of working through them. If you're thinking about going down the GFX route, obviously you'll notice when you're using the Voigtlander lens or any older lens on the GFX, because it's a 35mm or full frame lens on a medium format sensor, you'll get this vignette. And I do have this vignette correction here saved, but essentially it's basically just a case of going down to your lens correction section down here, choosing a profile that works best. I use this Voigtlander 21mm f1.81, and then just going to the manual bit and bringing up the vignette until you can't see it anymore. It's quite simple. And like I mentioned as well, obviously these are expensive. You can get free presets from freepreset.net. My ones, you know, I still sometimes use them, like with an image like this. In my ones I've got a black and white box speed, black and white pushed, colour film negative, colour film positive. The expired one is the one that I still sometimes use, just because I like that sort of look that you can get from it, and I can't seem to get this kind of look from any of the ones included with the Archetype process profiles. But yeah, I mean, I can use any of these Archetype process ones as well. Maybe I'll go for a Ecta 100 just to give it lots of colour. Apply that, bring up the exposure, drop them shadow highlights, bring up some shadows, you know, get it to a point you like, take it into Photoshop, apply some grain to it, and you're good to go. Bob's your uncle. Yeah, that's it. So that's it for this video. thanks so much for watching. Sorry if it felt a little bit rushed. I'm just sort of trying to get back into YouTube now and trying to kind of remember how I go about doing these videos and stuff. But I'm hoping to be posting more regularly going forward. So yeah, stay tuned. Hope it helped. Let me know if you've got any questions, and I'll see you in the next one.